Okay, and now we are at our last step. So you've probably implemented the motion design, those motion elements. You've come to the end of the road here. You have a prototype and it's looking super good, but you don't know if it's going to work. So testing is step 5. So you've created the prototype of your design, and testing is all that's left to test the design to find out if you've captured the user's needs and whether the users are impressed. And to be honest, the testing process can be accomplished in 4 steps. Step number 1, you need to schedule some user tests. You should identify the number of members for your audience for the test and decide when the testing will take place. You should really do your best to make sure that your target audience is represented with you users. So that being, if you're targeting parents for like kindergarten enrollment or school enrollment, you ensure that some of the users in that testing session are actually parents that have possibly gone through the same thing or maybe looking towards going through the same thing. So this is just something that you'll get better at in terms of recruiting participants. But when you're scheduling user tests, it's incredibly important that you're actually testing with the right users. Number 2, you should conduct the actual test. Run participants through the typical tasks that would lead to the use of the newly created motion element. And you should observe whether the new elements help or harm the experience. You should remember to gather feedback. What I always like to do is I like to record my tests as best as possible. And sometimes I actually bring others along with me, whether it doesn't actually matter if they're a designer or not, as long as they're willing to take notes. But it really helps to, for you to focus as a designer on what the user is doing, because something may not be picked up as to, how they're using the application or the website. You need to actually watch them as best as you possibly can to understand whether things are actually working out. Okay, so now you've conducted the test, you should review that feedback. Take some time to really go back through that feedback to determine whether your users like the new elements that you've designed. Feedback should be reviewed alongside the challenges identified in that very first step when we were talking about what the user's pain points are and what they need. And then once again, we're left to decide, do the new motion elements improve the user experience? If yes, congratulations, you're successful. Otherwise, you really have to go back to the drawing board. This kind of process that we outlined together, it isn't straightforward. It shouldn't be straightforward, whether or not you're an experienced designer. What I do stress, though, is the need for communication, both with your design team and your audience. Although motion adds so much to design, you don't want to end up with creations that really don't address your users' pain points. You don't want to be creating these different types of motion elements for the sake of adding motion to your design. You should have a very thoughtful process as to why you want to add a different element.